All right. Well, thanks everybody for hopping in here to this special master class. I'm Tom Miller, and I've got a great teaching partner with me today. I mean, he's a great guy, and no, it's definitely not Lauren. Lauren has not grown a beard and changed everything in a week. So, a high performance principal, Ted Duncan from Brevard Academy. Hey, Ted, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Yeah, thank you for being flexible. I asked Ted when I found that I was on my own this week, and then I had to travel by, plane today. And I'm like, well, that is not going to work out. So Ted, will you hop in with me? And if you were just in here, you heard a couple minutes of our Empowered Executives Inner Circle, which Ted is a member of, and we've got 50 charter school principals from across the state of North Carolina and Florida that participate. Each week we hop in and we talk through challenges. It's a really great program. But this is we are talking through our high performance, or the 10 indicators of high performing charter schools. This is session two. And if you can bear with me, everybody, I was actually realizing that last week I did not talk about the very, very important page of the book. So if you've got the book with you. And it was really cool. So this week I was in the John Maxwell conference, and during the Maxwell conference, I went around. I took my author's copy, Ted, and I got certain thought leaders that were there who inspired me to either write the book, right, or somehow contributed to the book to sign that page. And I got John to sign the inside cover quote, which is when you make a commitment, you build hope, and when you keep a commitment, you build trust. And the first book that I read of, John's, that really, really hit me was his book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And this is a quote from that book. And most of I'm a recovering addict, right? And so this book, or this quote in particular, really resonated with me. And that's why it's on the front of this book. But it also, it resonates with me because it should resonate with every school leader, and a charter school leader especially, right? Or a private school leader or like anything that's choice, right? But even every district leader too, right? Because it's like you're making commitments to create a better environment, a better learning environment, a better working environment. And when you say I'm going to do that, they're like, okay. But then
Hmm.
when you do
Hmm.
it, Ted, right? That's when you build trust. That's when everything starts to become more cohesive. And if you're a Maxwell fan and you've read his 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which all of our principals this year did in the inner circle, the law of credibility, or the law of solid ground, right? Is credibility is like change in your pocket. Every time you make a commitment and you follow through, you earn more change in your pocket. Every time you make a commitment and don't follow through, you got to pay out. And
Hmm.
if your payouts are more than your pay-ins, Ted, right? All you got is lint, right? You just have some lint in your pocket. So, but it's been really great. So yeah, so I had some thought leaders do that. If you're on my Facebook page, you maybe saw it, but I wanted to talk about the dedication page as well. So my son and my daughter, Devin and Matthew, they've just really helped me grow my heart. My wife that I met in seventh grade, she didn't talk to me in seventh grade, Ted, because you know how that works in seventh grade. But you're talking, it's 33 years ago we met. We were in the same homeroom. My dissertation chair, Dr. John Fischetti, who really moved me towards this charter movement, but he really pushed me to go work in the Office of Charter Schools because he said, what's the worst that could happen? Maybe in 2 to 3 years, you're not working there anymore and you're leading a high performing school. Well, gosh, I never dreamed, like, when he and I took that jog on the beach, when he said that, like, this is where I would be 12 years later. And then all the mentors and all of you and all my teammates. And so it's really exciting now that after 10 years in the program, or 10 years of owning the business, now we've got principals like Ted and Jennifer Killen and Anthony from East Wake and Vanessa, like all these school leaders that were part of our leadership programs are now out doing coaching and consulting under our umbrella. So it's just really exciting to see all this come full circle. So Thanks for giving me a couple minutes. Check out those pages at the very front of the book when you get your copy. All right, so last week we talked about sustained mission and vision, and hopefully you had a chance, everybody, to take a look at your mission. I sent you all the mission exercises. There's some exercises in the first chapter that you can do. In fact, I had a coach call me last night and they said, "Hey, I bought your book for 3 of my principals and they're having trouble with vision." I was like, it's like page, like, I don't know, 24, 48. There's like a bunch of guys that just take them through that process. But it is important, Ted, and I know you know this. You and I, we're both big picture people, right? So vision sometimes is easier for, folks that are just, bigger picture than if maybe you're, on the C style of a disc, right? You just might need everything in like a nice, neat package. And so that is important for leaders to go see other schools, other high performing schools, to really expose themselves to greatness. Don't expose yourself, like expose like your mind to
Mhm.
greatness, right? And see other schools. So can you tell everybody just a little bit about, Brevard Academy, but also how you've been a member of the consortiums and seen other schools?
Sure,
How's it helped you?
sure. Well, Tom, this position can be so isolating. Any leadership position can be so isolating, but especially being in a charter or a private school, or a non-traditional school where it ends with you, and then you got the board, and usually the board doesn't have any sort of understanding of what it is that you're doing each and every day. So I've just really enjoyed this community, really enjoyed learning from y'all, and especially on the consortium visits. It has helped me tremendously. I got my camera out when I'm going around taking pictures. You just recently had an expert session with an expert that we started using because we had gone to a consortium um, last year, and it was just fantastic. And it was a little bit also about the mission and vision, and talking about that, and just watching to see, like you said, being a big picture person. Okay, got the big picture. Now, what are the details? How do we push this out to others? What can you see in other schools that really talk about mission and vision? And then on the 2 indicators that we're going to talk about today, the quality of the work, and focusing on data. How are we seeing all that really play out, and make sure that it's happening at Brevard Academy. So Brevard Academy, we're in the western part of the state, western part of North Carolina. We have been with Leaders Building Leaders. Tom, I met you at Big Sky, Montana. Ben Butler introduced us,
Yeah.
and I think that it was that you had just launched the company, or been just a couple years in. But this has been such a great growth model for me, because we're sharing ideas without any sort of competition, where you might see that in a district where, sometimes that idea is to, hey, in a district, hey, I'm going to hold the good ideas so that I can be seen as doing something really well, where this is just such a free flow of knowledge, and it's really great. It's also taught me, by going to high performing charter schools, when I get a chance to go to other schools and other organizations, and I can go through and I can look and see, oh, okay, they do mission really well. I can tell. Like, I'll ask people when I go to different grocery stores, going to Publix as compared to one of the local grocery stores here. I asked them the other day. I said, "Why is everybody so happy here? What is it?" And they talked about their training regimen. They talked about, the values that they look for in people, and it's just huge. It just drives everything.
Yeah, it really does. I just spent the last 5 days in Orlando at the World Marriott. It's the largest hotel on the Eastern Coast, and I mean the conference room holds, 4 or 5 thousand. And it was interesting. It was my 16th time being there for this Maxwell conference, and the wait staff, Ted, because you haven't had a chance to actually go to Orlando yet, right? The
No, I did it over the Zoom, but
Yeah, yeah, you did the
one
virtual
day.
session. But the wait staff, and they're unbelievable. And I said to one guy, I said, "How long have you worked?" I said, "I've been coming here for 10 years, and I feel like I have known you personally." And he'd been there 19 years, and I met another one 37 years. I mean, imagine that, decades you know, and they're serving, and these are more than servers. I mean, they are just incredible. But you're right, it all comes down to the why. Why am I here? You know, what's the impact? Do I feel good about my why? And it is really important for you to be able to take your mission and to really break it down. So if you didn't do that exercise, you have access to it. It's in your bonus resources. There's exercises in the book. Start with your leadership team and really start to unpack your mission and start to point to tangibles in your school where you can actually point to how your mission is actually now it's starting, it's a verb, right? And when I was at the Maxwell conference, Tim Story was one of the speakers, and he said, you know, Maxwell is so good, we're all Maxwelling, right? His noun is turned into a verb, like we're all, you know, we're just exuding this Maxwell DNA, these core values. So it's really important. And if anybody has an aha from their mission meeting, you can unmute yourself if you want, or drop something in the chat and let us know how it went. But I just love that exercise, and I just ran into one of our teachers. She's going to take our kids through the Seaside Way, our middle school kids, and those are our core values. And she's going to have them start to create examples and non-examples. So we're really taking this to the next level. So. All right, and then hopefully you downloaded your wheel, or you're using your wheel in the back of your book, which is page 331 of your book, where you can download your wheel. And I'm a color mine, and I showed mine to Ted, and I got a tiny indicator 3. I'll tell you what, I got to work on this one. But this is really important that you mind this gap, right? So remember, we talked about the outside part of the wheel is what in your current perspective, right? Your current thought would be a perfect score. Okay. That means that every sub indicator in each indicator, you're like, we've got it. I feel it's at its highest level or close to it. And then there's a gap between where you currently are, right? And what a perfect score would be.
Mhm.
It's important for you to mind this gap, right? Because, you know, the end point is your arrival point. Where you are now is your departure point, right? And your goal is to identify what are the action steps for each of these sub indicators to move out. Now, you may feel intimidated. Like if you look in the bottom, of your download, like this is what one might feel, it can be a little intimidating, be like, oh man, I'm only a 1 out of 5. I don't think I'm a 1 out of 5, or my team thinks we're a 1 out of 5 in indicator 3. But it's important for you to understand that, we think success is only on the outside, because I've called it a wheel of success. But you know what success really is, Ted? I know you think like I do with this. Success is being able to mind the gap and close the gap. Right? The
Yes.
purpose of a goal is not to achieve the goal. The purpose of the goal is to grow into the leader who can achieve the goal, whether it's a personal goal or an organizational goal. Like, so, we see these like bumpy wheels and we're like, oh, look at all those blemishes. But what's most important is how you navigate through the blemish. Okay. So
Mhm.
don't worry about what your wheel looks like, right? Just the most important part, Ted, is that we paint a picture of the current reality. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
And
know
well,
you
and the other,
team,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, Tom, go on.
No, I was gonna say you took your team through this process before we had the wheel like this, right? So I'm really excited to have you on this call. Talk to us about those first, conversations when you had that. Yeah.
So I think it's just interesting where when you take your team through it, because Tom talked earlier also about communication, and I'll come right back to that. But the other thing, that every time that I read through chapter 1, indicator 1, thinking about mission and vision, I'm always thinking we can do this better. We need to get better at this. Does everybody really live and breathe this? Can
Yeah.
we bring it down? And it always seems like that's a high one on our wheel. And I do feel like we've done some intentional things, but I also just want to make sure, hey, are we making sure that we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing with this? And does everyone really understand it? Because I think that that's also the leader's job, where it's not just to identify the bumps and navigate through those, but also make sure that, like you just said, that the reality when we say we're doing well with something, that it's actually is true. Well, how do I know it's going well? What does that look like? And what are these things that I can be looking for? Um, I always find it interesting with the bumps in the road where it's not just that it's a lack of it, it's a lack of saying, of making sure that it's aware to everybody in the organization. So for all those who are going through this and you're thinking, and your team's going through it and they don't know, because we always, every time that I take my school improvement team through it, we always end up low on the indicator having to do with finances. So indicator number 7. And I think, man, we do that great. And so the gap is, again, what you talked about earlier with communication. It's just making sure that we are communicating the steps that we are taking, because sometimes that intentionality needs to be so clear. And for all my colleagues out there who are listening in North Carolina, we're in March of 2024. And so the teacher working condition survey was just released 10 days ago. And it is so important that when you get that data back, just like Tom talked about on the that idea of that Maxwell quote, when you make a commitment, you build hope. When you keep a commitment, you build trust. All right, what are your teams telling you? Because you could start to put those into the wheel as well. You could start to use those indicators, and what is it that they're trying to tell you with this? But just the intentionality that you have to take sometimes to make sure that everyone is aware. We get busy in schools. We were just on a leadership call where, hey, things get really busy. Subs don't show up. Someone goes home sick. Child's crying. A child got in trouble, and we sometimes forget to really take those intentional steps to say this is what we're doing, and that's why you got to have that plan written out. You got to make sure that that plan's communicated in those times when you have the ability to do that, so that it's that intentionality of communication that can really help to close some of those gaps, because it might be a perception gap and not necessarily a reality gap. So just like Tom was talking about, defining that reality, making sure that it's very clear, hey, these are the steps we're doing to improve. This is what you showed us that we can improve on. Let's move through that together.
Yep. And also remember, like, this book is built to be a lifetime book, and it's built to be a blueprint for your success. It's built for you to be interactive, to talk to it, to write to it, to do the exercises, right? To just it is your school improvement plan. So let's hop in indicator 2 here, Ted. Otherwise, everybody will be bored with us talking to ourselves. But so indicator 2 here is focusing on the quality work of the school, right? And so this encompasses, what's the purpose of school, everybody? For students to learn, right? So it's academic goals, and then it's the key tenets of your education plan are clear. They're learned, right? They're defined. They're trained. They're inspected. Everybody knows what they are. And we'll talk about these really important questions here. But in your book, I took the time to really look at goals and what's the purpose of goals. And we were just going through some of the data. We've had almost 500 people take this assessment now, and only 2/3 of the people who took the assessment identified that they have actually written out goals, for their school. And if you don't have a goal, right, well, then I guess every decision's okay. Because then you have nothing to actually, say, well, how is that going to help us reach our goal if we've got that in place? So the first step always is, right? I mean, and it goes, this book is in order on purpose, pretty much. But you've got your mission, like, why do we exist? You got your vision, what are we looking to achieve, right? And then from your vision creates your goals, your long-term goals, your annual goals. Your annual goals help you, get to your quarterly objectives. Your quarterly objectives help you plan out your monthly, pieces, and then your daily action. It's the same things, because a goal without a plan, a goal without a communicated executing strategy is just a wish. It's not going to happen. And on page 34, there's a quote here that I wrote, high performing schools, right? they are focused on the right things, not by luck, but by knowing what the most important aspects are. And the most important aspect of your school is that kids are learning, right? And all of these things have to have a goal attached. And so we're going to talk about, I mean, you can have goals for any aspects of your school, whether it's academic, whether it's social, character education, communication, attendance, engagement. Like you could wrap goals around a lot of stuff, right? But ultimately, it all comes down to student learning.
Absolutely. Just completely agree with it. I was really proud of our school improvement team because one of the reasons, Tom, that you talk about in the book, where starting on page 37, what are the problems and mistakes that we have with setting goals? Reason number one, goals don't inspire. We don't aim high enough. And I was really proud with our school improvement team. We set some really high academic goals last year.
Yeah.
We were not pleased with where we were. We wanted higher goals, and we did not aim at what we thought would be possible without some great change. I mean, we needed to change some things up to be able to reach these goals, um, and it's that buy-in. It's saying, okay, we're all going to do this together. We're looking to do, we're looking to go better. We're looking to be higher, and that's making sure that you're there for a real purpose. We just had information enrollment nights, and I would tell the parents, don't choose us because of who we're not.
Yeah.
Don't say, hey, you're coming to us because you don't like the traditional system, because you might not end up liking us. Come to us for who we are. And I think that's, just like you said, that's that mission and vision, but also that mission and vision happens through the setting of goals by making sure that you're setting the right goals, and that you're bringing others along with you as you do set those goals.
Yeah.
So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong. And it's Ted, it's crazy. I hear this, I go to those charter school advisory board meetings and we write those charter applications, and sometimes they'll say, we think your goals are too high. And I go, what? What do you, I mean, don't tell someone their goals are too high,
Mhm.
right? I mean, like to your point, you were talking about the mission and vision, we can do this better. That's the whole point. The whole point
Mhm.
is to give you a bottom line, right? And now that goal is now your floor, right? You're just going to explode past it because you're
Mhm.
putting those pieces in place. And as Les Brown says, I mean, shoot for the stars. Even if you get halfway, you're still on the moon. It's okay. It's a lot
Mhm.
higher than
Mhm.
what you wanted. So make sure you've got written down goals. If you either don't have the book and you're listening, or you don't have the bonuses and you already have the book, go to 10indicators.com. There's a button there. You could just click on the button, put your information in, and you'll get all the bonuses downloaded. It's like a 5-page list of all things that you could have goals for that I could come up with, in all areas of the school: academics, operations, finances. And you definitely want to make sure at minimum your academic goals are in alignment to what your charter renewal said if you're a charter school, right? Or
Mhm.
if you're a private school, to whatever you're like, this is what a private school is about. Or if it's a district school, like I was a district teacher for 7 years. I wanted to be the best school, right? I didn't want to be a average school. I mean,
Mhm.
there's nothing good about average. It's an ugly word, I think. So, and Ted already brought up, mistakes when writing goals, right? And that's one of them, right? That we don't think we're worthy of the goal, or we set a goal too low and we hit it and we just kind of sit there. Page 38, there's some really good exercises just to help you really think through where I should be setting goals on. So now my favorite quote, Ted, of this entire book, I might be a little biased here. It's on the bottom of page 43. So now I've got my goal set, right? And now I need to go, okay, well, how am I going to achieve this goal, right? And this is where I have to have my education plan really, really tight and clear. And so at the bottom of page 43, I remember when I read this book for the first time. I still remember where I read it. I was on Wrightsville Beach, and I got this book by Michael Schmoker. I had no idea who Michael Schmoker was, but it was called Focus, and it was all the rage. And I'm like, and there was only one line in the whole book. Like the rest of the book, I don't think I marked anything except this one line. The key to effective leadership is identifying the smallest number of high leverage, easy to understand actions that unleash stunningly powerful consequences. Like he's just, yeah, there you go. It's just a
There
minor,
it is.
yeah. And that's all he's saying. Like you don't have to revamp everything. You just have to find what's going to give us the it's really the Pareto principle, right? It's what's going to be the one leverage, right? The one indicator. I can shift this. I can make significant changes. And in our inner circle, we were talking about the difference between seat time and engagement time.
Hmm.
Shout out to David Franklin. He's the founder of the Principals Desk, a giant Facebook group for principals and school leaders. It's got like 235,000 in it. But I just grabbed his book and I was reading it, and he talked about his first school that he was a principal of was a low performing school. And when he was doing observations, he had realized that only on average about 11 minutes. Now he was not the only one that did the observations because he realized like if I bring this information back to the teachers, they're going to be pissed and they're going to hang me, right? So he had other teachers also do observations, but it was on average 11 out of the 55 minutes per class is how long students were actually engaged in learning activities. 11 out of 55, it's 20% of the time. It just makes you wonder what the heck's going on, like, the rest. But then it kind of makes you look in the mirror and go, well, what's happening in my classrooms? Like, where would we compare? And what would be the top of the line anyway, right? So that goes to the questions around education, right? The three or five, right? There's three, but I kind of extended them at the bottom of page 44. The five questions. What are students going to learn, right? This is your curriculum. And I mean, honestly, everybody, if you're a public school, it should be the state, whatever the curriculum that the state has adopted is your curriculum. Now, you may have some sort of, program that aligns and say, well, this is the, curriculum program that we use, right? But the state's curriculum is your curriculum, right? It's giant, right? So what will students learn? How will the curriculum be taught? This is your instructional methods. How do you know that they've learned it? This is your daily, or even not even daily. It's like maybe it's every 5 minutes, your informal and formal assessment process. And then what are you going to do if they don't learn it? So that's prevention and intervention. And what if they do? That's acceleration, right? So really questions 4 or 5 are kind of like an A and B off of 3. And so when I thought about David, Franklin's point, I was like, oh, that's all number 2. Like, how will curriculum be taught, right? Are we project based? Are we direct instruction? If we're direct instruction, how much are kids actually giving information back? So Ted would love to hear your thoughts around the education books. I know your team's been working hard on this over the last couple of years too.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of times we complicate things. We get away from smokers' idea of just what do you just have to be laser focused on? Because I remember where I was reading that book, we were on our way. I was reading it over summer. We were on our way down to Hunting Island. I was reading it in the car as my wife was driving, and had so many of those same takeaways. But I think that sometimes we tend to get caught up in, all right, what's the instructional method? What's the curriculum that we've adopted? And we forget to align it with with the um, with the goal that we forget to align those goals with what the state is actually going to assess us on. And so we do some misalignment there. And that's something that our team has really spent a lot of time this year talking about, because our staff really loves the curriculum that we have. They're not so crazy about the state standards. But if we are looking to reach this goal that we set that was really high, we've got to make sure that, hey, we are teaching the state standards through our curriculum. We got to make sure that we're teaching them how to play the game, and make sure. And I don't consider this teaching to the test. It's preparing for the performance.
Yep.
I always give this analogy of, if I coached all week long in flag football, and then we got to the game and, oh, now you got to put on the pads. We're going to go out there and we're going to play a tackle football game. I have not prepared you in the least for what you're going to be going up against. And so we really got to make sure that all that alignment is there, and what's happening in the classroom has got to be aligned with that final assessment in terms of what they're doing, because otherwise the goal isn't aligned to the roadway that you're going to get there. That, like you said, what is it that the students will learn? All right, that's the destination. How will the curriculum be taught? All right, that's how we're going to get there. And then those pit stops, what are we going to do if they learned it? What are we going to do if they didn't learn it? How are we going to make our adjustments? So what does that look like? And once all three of those are in line, it really starts to roll, and we're starting to. I feel like we're really starting to feel some of that roll at Brevard Academy. So I'm excited about it, and that all comes from that benchmarking, within our own curriculum, but also making sure that we're aligning that to state level benchmarks as well.
Yeah. And when you've got this, we call it the education plan a playbook, right? So then you're writing out these answers, and now what's all the supplemental curriculum, like what are all these things? Because then I can actually I can make decisions now. I can filter things through these five questions. Because then if someone says, "Oh man," or like a board member, because this happens. I read an article over the weekend that says that kids who read Mandarin Chinese, right, are 99% assured of going to Harvard. And I was, oh my gosh, well, we should. I'm like, whoa, where does that fit in our mission, purpose, and goals here, right? Our purpose, mission, vision, goals, and our playbook. Like maybe that's a parking lot, right? But if you don't have these things written down and you don't have goals, then every decision's okay, right, Ted? I mean, it
That's
just
right.
opens you up to these pieces. And then, on page 45, I always love it when he said, hey, well, what's the best education plan for, 99, 90% free and reduced lunch schools? I'm like, oh God, I love this question. Like give them like the biggest secret in the world, like the one you implement with fidelity, right? I mean, that's it. Just pick a plan and make sure it aligns to your clientele, first of all, and drive it and get really, really good at it. I mean, if you think about Malcolm Gladwell said it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert. Now, Ted, your school's core knowledge, right? Pretty much.
We are a Cornell school.
Yeah. So I mean, core knowledge is hard because you do have to be pretty educated yourself to teach core knowledge, because it's got a lot of literacy components, right? And there's just a lot of just cross content material. So like 10,000 hours is a long time for someone.
Yes, it is.
That's practice time. So if I just said David Franklin said that the average was 10 minutes. If you're only getting 10 minutes 5 times a day, that's really only an hour of actual practice experience, right? Of improving as a teacher. So, your training time can't just be here's the book, here's the curriculum, or go download it. Like it has to be very, very intentional all the time. And that's a lot of indicator 3, right? Is having a professional development plan that is truly equipping and instilling confidence in teachers, giving them time to practice, having reflective conversations and evaluative experience to grow. Because otherwise, I mean, I just thought about this. I've got 10 years in this business, and I would say that I take the time to study leadership on average 2 or 3 hours a day. I'm just approaching my 10,000 hours. Just approaching it. And like, sometimes we think like a brand new teacher should just be able to do it because they graduated college and have a bachelor's degree. No, not even close. They have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea. And even 5-year veterans, right? And which is always funny. I remember my first teammate in this business, Jeff Gorski, his mom and dad are outstanding teachers. And I remember when they were retiring, his mom said to me, and she was always a dynamic teacher. She said, it's a shame because I finally feel like I really know what I'm doing. 30 years.
Yes.
Finally know, right? So everybody, you have to be gracious on yourself, but you have to build a structure that people can grow at, improve on, and then just make minor tweaks. Stop changing your whole curriculum because it doesn't work. It doesn't work because you're not working it.
Right.
Every,
Right. No,
yeah.
I love that, Tom. I think it's so hard for us to remember that education is a practice. we were practicing at educating, because even if you've been in it for 5 years, you've only done day one 5 times.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
only done day 100 5 times.
I never thought of that.
You haven't had that much practice with it. So you talk about those 10,000 hours, each day is a new day. And so you're not getting a chance to do it. And I'll give you this to just compare it. So we have been, Brevard Academy celebrating its 25th year this year. We've been at core knowledge school all 25 of those years. Our teachers love the core knowledge sequence. They love the curriculum. The local school district went to core knowledge 2 years ago. They're having revolts because it's a hard curriculum to teach. It is difficult. And I can't remember where I learned this, but it's that idea of that implementation dip. Well, sure, we're always looking to chase that shiny, bright new thing that we think is going to solve all the problems. And gosh, those who sell curriculum are so good at packaging it that way that, hey, this is going to take care of everything. But you got to make sure that are you going to dedicate yourself to it? Are you going to learn it? Are you going to figure out how to use all those things? Because if you don't, just like you said, you're going to be left saying, hey, this isn't doing what I was supposed to do. You got to work the curriculum. You got to spend time going through it, and you've got to support the folks who are implementing it each and every day, and making sure that they have that support.
Yeah, Ted, I'm just writing down some notes because you just really opened my mind up. And I hope everybody on this call, whether you're listening live or recording, appreciates this. All right. So give us a yes in the chat box if you're with live, like, hey, this is helpful, or like, what are you guys even saying? I don't know. But I mean, for me, Ted, I just heard you say this. There's two things you have to be really mindful of. One is, I want to get the term right. But it's about that bureaucratic creep, or that scope, right? Like, because when you change something, it's called scope creep, right? So when you change something in your organization, significant change, it really impacts everybody. So if you ever every 2 years you're changing your plan, like, you've just lost 2 years of people practicing that plan and getting better at it, right? So I remember, Ted, we helped write and open the first innovative school district school here in North Carolina. And I remember, because it was a core knowledge school, and I remember how hard it was for the teachers, because they themselves didn't have the foundational skills to really do it, right?
Sure.
So, but I thought about, the worst thing we could do is just eliminate core knowledge, because we know it works.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to hold that image up here, the top of the wheel, but you got to start with where you are, and you got to be okay with where you are. Because if you know what works, I can't start here. I got to start down here. Now, what does down here look like for my people, right? And that's really challenging for, like, someone who's maybe done core knowledge or any curriculum or any, like, practice for a long time. Like, it makes me think about those great Hall of Fame athletes that go back as a coach, right? And they're not always like, how do I connect with, like, how did you not see that guy? What, like, they don't have the intuition,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have the ability. So be really gracious on your team, everybody. And think about, just like you're identifying what mastery looks like for your kids. And if you don't have a common school-wide definition for student mastery, that's where you got to start. Because if you don't know, how how does the staff know, right? It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not sure of the curriculum, how would the staff know? But you also need a common definition of mastery for your employee, and making sure that that they buy in to this curriculum, they buy into this instructional methods, that they buy in to feedback, and they buy in to growth. And you can't be so hard on them because they didn't get it yet. It takes time. It takes time,
Yes.
right? So watch that scope, and make sure that you're holding an image of, up here, but you got to understand that you're also closing that, gap. So I love it. Whew, I'm already wore out, Ted. All right. So if you haven't already, make sure you score your score your score. So in my book, it's on page 55 and 56. It might be different for you guys. I have a different, the author's version was a little bit different, but you just, at the end of the chapter, make sure you score your three sub indicators and then color it in on your wheel. And I do want to say this, because one of the when you've got your sub indicators about the education plan, we don't, here at our school at, Seaside School, we don't have a set curriculum except the state's curriculum. And it was interesting, one of the teachers said, well, listen, Kim's the principal. She tells us about high standards and high expectations and high levels of mastery, and then she empowers us, to get there. So they'll use all sorts of supplementary material as long as they can, talk about how it gets kids to that top. So it doesn't mean you have to have like core knowledge or
Right.
journey, right? It doesn't matter. But what I heard Ted say is make sure it lines up to
Mhm.
what is going to be assessed for mastery at the end of the year. And that's what's
Mhm.
most important, right? Or whatever you're trying for your kids to achieve, like whatever you want them to do when they graduate your school, right? That's critically important.
And we have to spend time with that each year, Tom, because we want to be a B school or better and say, okay, well, what is it that we have to do then to achieve that? And is there anything in here is there anything that is lacking in the curriculum, or is there anything that is that we can cut out of the curriculum to spend more time on those things that are lacking? No, that alignment is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, in North Carolina, right, you need what, 1,085 hours or something. When you look at it, it's only like 150 days, maybe. I mean, every single day, like as a principal, like I'm only with my staff 7 hours a day. So how am I
Mhm.
going to use that 7 hours? It's the same. If I only teach each kid for 55 minutes a day, it can't be 11 minutes. Like I got to give them 35, 40 minutes of me. Because if I'm
Mhm.
the best at what I do and I'm a teaching that standard, I have to make sure that my whole lesson is really focused on engagement and getting them to the level of independence so then they can practice their independence outside of this classroom. So let's do it. So make sure you write down your action step for 2 as we head on to indicator 3. So indicator 3, let me pull it up here on our screen so everybody can see it. So this is the quality work of the student, right? So focusing on the quality work of the student through a data-driven culture. And a lot of this is borrowed from Leverage Leadership that I think they just really did a great job. But having a highly active instructional leadership team, ongoing introductory and ongoing professional development and implementation calendar, ongoing PD, and build by borrowing. And Ted and I talked a little bit about this. So this indicator has 5 sub indicators. And again, when we looked at the scores here, Ted, for this one, when I shared them with you,
Mhm.
we had what were the really, only 61% said that they had a highly active instructional team.
Mhm.
62% said that they had that introductory and ongoing professional development. 69% said that they had the academic calendar in place. And then the build by borrowing was only 50%, right? So it really, it just means that I see that they're not getting outside of their classroom or they're a school to see what, better practices are, which you and I both know is such a huge opportunity for you to see what works, in other schools. But then the other piece is that they don't have potentially the right supervision ratio to get into classrooms and make sure that teachers are, being helped and supported and grown in their working environment. So what of these 5 sub standards for you was, something you wanted to talk about today?
Well, I definitely think the other thing for all the school leaders who are listening is just because you're responsible for it, Tom, in this, where just because you're responsible for it doesn't mean that you have to do it all, and you can't do it all.
Right.
You definitely can't do it all. And so the biggest gift that you can give to your teaching staff is to give them someone who can be 100% dedicated to just instruction, and then just take you got to be that snowplow to get everything else out of the way for them, where they can focus on professional development, they can focus on academics, and they can really be having that. Because I know that many of you are probably in the role because you love academics, you love teaching, you love professional development, but to be honest, those are not the things that come across our desk most of the time. Most of the time, we're dealing with bigger fires that have to be taken care of. And so to give your teaching team that person who can really be focused on it. And it doesn't have to be a new position. It could be, because you might be saying, well, Ted, we're a small school, we don't have the money to do this. Well, dream big. How can you figure out how to do it to where you've got a great teacher who you can grow into a leadership position? Are there people that you can start to empower there? And so I think that that's been one of the best things that we've been able to do, is really take this seriously about having very clear indicators when we go into classrooms. What are we looking for? Making sure that the staff is aware of it, and then everything moves at the speed of trust. Making sure that we're given that feedback, that it's happening quickly, so that everyone is able to take actionable steps on it. That's something that we have really spent a lot of time on, because it was something that was identified as low, where we talked about professional development being low because it felt more like it was to everyone. So the second thing that we've done, by having that dedicated person, we now can have our PLCs where that professional development doesn't have to try and catch kindergarten through 8th grade. All right, you're the kindergarten teachers. We're going to give you professional development. We're going to give you feedback specifically to 5-year-olds. We're going to turn around. We're going to talk about what adolescents mean in the PLC there. So by really giving someone that time to think about it, that has been just that has moved mountains for us in terms of how people are feeling in terms of professional development.
Yeah. And so if you look at the book, again, if you've got it, if you don't get it, go to 10indicators.com. You can get it right now, or go on Amazon and, grab this book. It's in your hands in 2 days. But indicator 1 is, why do we exist? Indicator 2 is, what do we do? Indicator 3 is, how will we succeed, right? This is really important, because if you don't have oversight, if you don't have, development as part of your plan, you're really going to flounder. It's really going to be hard for you, because results leave clues. Now, if there's no one there to see the clues, there's no one paying attention to the clues, nothing will ever change, and you can't make those subtle tweaks to really improve. And this is where, if you haven't heard it was one of our first 10 principal office podcasts. I think it was the interview with Eric Sanchez, and it's I don't know, it's like 6 or 7 years old now, but it doesn't matter. You can listen to that thing every day, and you're going to learn something. I mean, that's a school, Henderson Collegiate, where like they are no nonsense. You've got operations people and you got academic people, and they barely cross unless there's something like impacting each other, because they're very intentional about what is, he said we are successful because we have individuals on our team whose only responsibility is to think about what's happening between the 4 walls of every classroom. Now, I think about what's happening, but I don't always have the time to do anything about it. Right? I'm like, oh, I got to get to that. And like Ted said, oh, I gotta negotiate with the copy guy, or I got a fire alarm thing happen, or I got a parking problem, or I gotta fix the car line, right? Next thing you know, little Johnny isn't learning anything because I haven't gone back into that classroom and made sure. And that's the difference. And like Ted said, it doesn't have to be expensive. Maybe you got a really great teacher that has been trained how to be a coach, and maybe you have them have a substitute once or twice a month, right? So they could do rounds and they could get extra, touches, or maybe you build into their schedule where they have an extra planning period, but that's really spent just doing a walkthrough and, giving feedback. Like, there's ways you can do it. It doesn't have to be this, whole other brand new administrative position to get better results, right?
Well, and Tom, like you talked about getting outside of your school and going to see other schools. Think about when you were in the classroom, how many opportunities, and I'm speaking to everybody who's on the call here, how many times did you get the opportunity to go and see what was happening right next door? Probably not too much. And so I really encourage you. We started something called Lead and Learn Days here, where hey, we're going to get you a sub, or we're going to get someone to cover your class. And it's scaled. So when you come to us early, you get this. If you're a beginning teacher, you get it once a month. Half the day, we want you out in other classrooms. You sit down with our instructional coach or dean of academics, and she takes you and she really identifies things that you want to see, and then you get to go see that within the class, within the school. Um, and and then as you become more a veteran teacher, then you do it twice. You get the opportunity to do it twice a year, but we want you to be hosting those. But as you are hosting them and visiting in the classrooms less, we want to then turn you around and put you through the Leaders Building Leaders teacher leadership academy, so that now you're getting out, you're seeing what's happening in other schools, you're bringing it back. So again, it does not have to be something, doesn't have to be something huge that you can start, but getting folks out of their rooms, seeing what's happening in other places, just so huge.
Yeah. And you could, I outlined this on pages 61 and 62. It doesn't have to be one person doing these things, leading feedback and planning meetings, observing teachers, improving results. Like, it could be a couple people, like a couple that's just a little bit of their job, but they're working as a team, as Ted just, talked about. But the important thing is equipping them to do so. The leader has to give, clarity on what success would look like based on this investment. And then over time, you could just, build it into your budget. Because I guarantee you, if you're a charter school, right, every kid who comes into the door is a dollar sign. If you start raising your academic performance and raising the reputation, guess what's going to happen? More people are going to
Yes.
show up and they're going to stay, right? And you're going to get better teachers who want to come work with you. I mean, it's
Yes.
all part of the process, right? But you have to start somewhere. So don't. I've heard this mistake. Oh, we're going to hire coaches or we're going to promote them. Please make sure that they've had some sort of coaches training. Don't just give someone a coach title because your teachers are going to eat them alive. You got to make sure that they have the credentials and they're a person of influence, right? Who understands and connects and builds relationships, because they're not a supervisor, they're a support person. But I've seen many situations where that's gone awry, where like the leader feels like, oh, I'm just going to give this off to somebody, and then they don't get the results that they want. And now I got another problem. Now I got someone in a position who's frustrated. My staff is frustrated. I'm frustrated. What do I do? Because I promoted my best teacher to be a coach. Just make sure you equip them, you take them through the process. We have a coaching training program, but there's lots of ones out there. Just make sure that they've gone through something, and then you've set really clear expectations for what you want that person to do. I love it. Looks like you were going to share something, Ted. Was there something you wanted to?
Well, I was going to say the person who we've got in this role went through the coaching training that you did, and just it's that key phrase that you said. This is a support person for the people who are delivering the instructional plan. And just like Tom said, as you start to improve the level of caliber of who you're attracting, both students and staff, that is going to improve. And just on the other side,
Yep.
if you are not taking care of it, well, people are going to start to walk away. And like you said earlier on this call, Tom, no one wants mediocrity. No one wants to be average. And when you're mired in that, you get who you attract who you are. And so
Right.
you got to. Our job is to set that vision and then make sure that we're putting in the plan to make sure that it's happening.
Yep. And then so there's a couple of activities here for you guys, and I would really encourage you to assess your meetings on page 67. There's an assessment tool to see how engaging and productive your meetings are. I mean, I always encourage my principals, say, look around the table. You and the finance director know how much all those people make. Like, are you getting the value? If they're all making $50 an hour and you just met for an hour and there's 10 of them, that's $500. Did you get $500 worth out of that hour together, right? So look at it as an investment. And then also make sure on page 75 that as you're planning professional development, or whoever's planning it with you, during which part of the training are they going to practice that skill? Don't just teach people things. Don't just tell them what you read in a newspaper article. Make it engaging, right? Have them practice that skill, and then how often will they practice, and who's going to, go back and, check on them. What would success look like? I love Piedmont Community Charter. They have, when they do professional development, they actually build it back into their walkthrough protocol. So when they're doing walkthrough protocols, they're actually giving feedback on maybe what the initiative is, for this year, or the training, maybe it's a new, part of their program, right? So everything should have intentionality, and that's what indicator 3 is all about. And if you're like me, even though we're a high performing school, top in the state of Florida, I'm not so happy with our indicator 3. I want to really take a look. I'm going to have my whole team take this assessment this week and see, because we can get, like Ted said, we can get a lot better than what we already are. And we can maybe, the most important part is I can start to peel away time and make sure that we're really focusing on our time, because we only have about a 6.5 hour instructional day here with that. And we do a lot of activities and a lot of events, right? So we're really good. We're actually, great, but what would that next level be for us? Ted, what's an action step you can take out of either indicator 2 or 3 for your team?
Well, I really think that I want to make sure that my admin team, that we go through this and we start to look at, on pages 80 through 81, what we're looking at next year is, we're not looking at adding anything big. So I really want to make sure we go through that calendar. It's that intentionality. How are we going to improve on the things that we have seen that we need to improve? And I also want to just go back to what you said about meetings. So important, because especially in a school, we are so busy, and that time that you have together, it's crucial, because you just don't have that much time together. So make sure that you're giving your staff members as well time to evaluate how did this work for you? Because they're going to tell you what are some of those things that they need, and what are some of the things that they really want. In fact, I know we're getting close on time here, Tom, but you did talk about those off topic conversations. One of the things that we've started doing in our meetings is the first 10 minutes, hey, that is for fellowship. That is to say hello to people in the building that you have not seen, because you've been talking to 6-year-olds for the past 2 weeks, So we want to make sure that we are building that in there. Then the other thing that we've started to add in is a work burst. 30 minutes to practice this thing that we just taught you, or to get something done that we know that you need to get done. And people are constantly telling us in their evaluations, hey, I love the fact that you build in that social time, and we want more work burst time. Okay, great. We will work to build those things back in. So I think that we need to spend some time looking at our professional development calendar for next year, and making sure that we're looking through that.
Yeah, agreed. And that was one of my areas of growth, is that I'm about to put my calendar in front of our board this Thursday, and it's the calendar shell. But what I want to make sure is that we go back as a staff and we do a backwards design in terms of like, hey, when is our fast assessments? I mean, the county and the district kind of drives those, but but if you're going to give an assessment, you have to build time on the back end for the teachers to review the assessment, to analyze the assessment, to make new plans, right? That goes back to indicator 2 with those questions. What if kids mastered it? What are we going to do? Or what if they didn't, right? So when I build time in post summative assessment, right, or post quarterly assessment, or a lot of you use MAP or iReady, whatever, right? That's information. Some of it's summative, some of it's not. What are you doing to make sure your teachers have the time together? You've taught them what to do with that time together. That's a big piece. Teaching your teams how to be collaborative in a PLC is a skill in itself. And if you don't have that skill, go ask a school who has one, and maybe they can train you, or they can sit in some of your meetings. Right. And make sure your calendar has, like, these are our instructional days. These are our assessment days. These are our professional development days. These are our reteach days. Like, all those days need to be kind of fit, because like, your teachers are trying to jam a lot of curriculum into a really short time. So make sure you've got that. So that's one of my action steps as well. And then the build by borrowing. So right now you all have a high performing school within 20 or 30 miles. Go find one if it's not you, right? And even if it's you, go find another one. And get in that school, reach out to that principal and say, hey, I just want to I just want to walk through your school for, like a couple hours. Would you walk me through? I just want to see things. It's going to help open and expand your vision for that. So everybody, make sure you score your indicators 2 and 3. Write down what your action steps are going to be. And then this Wednesday or Thursday, whenever you have your staff meeting, your team meeting, right? Bring your wheel together and say, okay, what did you pull out of this? What do you think we need to work on? And start building out your skinny strategic plan. That's just 2 or 3 steps to get to that next substandard. Ted, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you missed your lunchtime probably for us, and I just appreciate it. How can we help Brevard Academy? What's one thing we could do as a community to help Brevard Academy?
I would love to hear what people felt was what you thought were some good ideas here. So I'm going to put in my contact information, and I would just love to hear something that you thought was good, and I'd love to just be able to talk to you a little bit more about that. So what was something that you thought, hey, I want to hear a little bit more about that? That would be very helpful. I know it's got Tom's picture, but that is me right there. So that
That's
would
a lot.
be something that would be helpful.
Ted has a lot more hair than I do, everybody, if you're listening on the podcast. Yeah. So go to brevardacademy.org, Brevard,
Correct.
BRVARD, and check out the fun things they're doing. I really like their website. They've got a lot of good parent engagement, and they're highlighting their staff. If you want a social media plan to follow, Ted and his team are doing a really good job. They've started to get into the development phase and projects. So it's a really good school for you to have. If you're not in the area, you could follow them and just get some good ideas about how they're highlighting their staff and their students, and bringing some really good ideas. And if you're a core knowledge school, check out Ted and
Love to
his
have you.
team. They would love to have you. And on a personal note, Ted also, he does some independent consulting on the side too. So check out his Duncan Dispatch, and you can look him up, and then get on his newsletter. I'll make sure I put a link in the comments here so you can hear from Ted. He puts out words of wisdom every week, what he's reading, what he's learning, what he's doing. So it's always fun to follow Ted and listen. So, all right, Ted, thank you. And everybody, make sure that you take action, right? You got to do something. Do at least one minor thing this week, just like Michael Schmoker did. It might not be the right thing. It doesn't matter. But whatever you identify as the one thing that you could do to start, getting your academic plan moving in a better direction. Maybe it's setting mastery. Maybe it's making sure you're in the classes more, or you're giving feedback more, or you just say, hey, you know what? Don't use a supplementary program anymore because we have no idea whether it works because we're not even measuring. It's just a waste of time for now, right? You can hug it, thank it, and tell it to go like Maria Kondo. So, all right. Love you guys. See you next Monday night. We'll be back at our regular time at 7 p.m. Eastern. Bye-bye.